Hello, I'm Ryan Phillips, author of The Blue Ridge Between Us. One of the things I wanted to do with The Blue Ridge Between Us was take names that had been passed down in my family and give them breath again. These were not just characters to me. They were real people. They lived in these mountains. They raised families here. They carried wounds here. Some of their names are still tied to the land itself. In the Phillips and Sams families around Mars Hill and Flag Pond, Fidel Phillips was remembered as a beloved man. For years after the war, he served as a horseback mail carrier in Flag Pond, becoming one of those figures a community comes to know not only by name, but by presence. At family reunions, the old stories always described him as a kind of kid spy during the Civil War. He was never conscripted into Confederate service, but somehow, some way, he was involved. And in the 1910 census, he even identified himself as a Confederate Army veteran. That old family memory, part record, part mystery, part inherited story, became the heart of his role in the book. And that is where Josiah Sams enters the story. Josiah was not only important to the Sams family, he was important to the early history of Mars Hill College. His family helped found the institution, and even during the early years of the war, when money was scarce and uncertainty was everywhere, Josiah gave money to help keep the college running. That tells you something about the kind of man he was. He believed in something beyond the chaos around him. But Josiah also suffered terribly during the war. He really was hanged by raiders, just as I mentioned in the book, and he survived. He carried horrible scars on his neck for the rest of his life. I believe that may be why he wore the neck beard we see associated with him. That kind of detail matters to me because it shows how history stays on the body. The war did not simply end and vanish. Men carried it in scars, in silence, and in the way they presented themselves to the world. Alan Buckner was another real figure who fascinated me. He made and used his own rifle during the war, and he lived on Buckner Gap, the place that carried his name, until he was 102 years old. Think about that. A man who lived through the Civil War and then lived long enough to become almost a living bridge between generations. His name stayed in the land. William Murray was the same kind of figure in a different way. He supported Mars Hill College and even helped build the first college building. He lived the rest of his life on Murray Mountain, another place that took its name from the family. And there is a deeper family connection there too. William Murray's sister, Rebecca Emmeline Murray, married Josiah Sams. She was Mary Liz Sams's mother. That connection is true, even though I did not include it directly in the book. Joel Holcomb is another figure whose story shows how the Civil War did not truly end when the Army stopped fighting. Holcomb was a militia or home guard officer around Mars Hill during the war, and his name became tied, fairly or unfairly, to the bitterness surrounding Shelton Laurel. After the war, he was murdered in his own front yard by Joe Shelton in what was understood as a revenge killing for Holcomb's supposed involvement. That is one of the reasons Shelton Laurel matters so much in this book. It was not only an atrocity in 1863. It kept reaching forward. It followed men home. It waited in families, in grudges, in rumors, and finally in blood. Holcomb's death reminds us that in these mountains, the war's violence did not always wear a uniform. Sometimes it came later, up to a man's own yard. And then there was Hiram Phillips. Hiram was Fidel's brother, and from everything passed down, he loved Fidel deeply. He even named his son after him. That one fact says so much. In a family, names are never just names. They are memory. They are honor. They are a way of saying, this person mattered enough to carry forward. That is what the Blue Ridge Between Us is really built on. Not just battles, not just politics, not just the Civil War. It is built on names, scars, roads, mountains, family stories, and the question of what survives after history has done its damage. Fidel Phillips, Josiah Sams, Alan Buckner, William Murray, Joel Holcomb, Hiram Phillips. These were real men. They belonged to real families. They stood in real places. And for me, this story is not distant history. I am a direct descendant of Fidel Phillips, Allen Buckner, William Murray, Josiah Sams, and Joel Holcomb. Hiram Phillips was my second great-granduncle. So when I wrote The Blue Ridge Between Us, I was not only writing about the past, I was writing about my own blood. And in many ways, those mountains still speak their names. Thanks for reading. Ryan Phillips.